Okay, so we're recording. So hi again. Let's do some review. So I used this metaphor earlier and it worked kind of well. So I'm going to go ahead and use it again. Has anyone ever seen wolves walk in a pack before? How do they walk?
See what? Sorry.
Wolves. So the animal like a wolf. When they walk in a pack, how do they walk?
Isn't it like everyone in the front and the leader in the back?
Yes.
Is it like
oh my
that?
God. Who knew I had so many wolf experts in my someone this morning knew that as well. Yeah. So when wolves walk in a pack, the weakest ones walk in the front. Who walks in the back? If the weakest are in the front, who's in the back?
Strongest?
The strongest. Yeah. So the strongest wolves are at the back of the pack. Why are the weakest ones up at the front?
The strongest can see them, what's happening.
The strongest can see them, see what's happening. If there's like a threat from behind the, oh, there's Marie. If there's a threat coming from behind, the strongest are at the back so they can address that, make sure everyone's okay. And the weakest are up front because the rest of the pack has respect for the weaker ones. So they're letting them set the pace for the way the pack moves. No one's rushing them. The ones in the back might say, hurry along if things are moving along too slowly. But generally speaking, the weaker ones, perhaps the ones with less experience are up front, and that sets the pace and the tone for the rest of the pack. I feel like two things have kind of gotten in the way of our real grasping of the SBC material. One, I see a lot more people have signed on to the course material, which is great. I truly encourage you. There's no shame if you haven't signed on. Please just sign on if you're having trouble signing on, and I'm happy to connect you to the person who can help you sign on. A lot of what I'm saying in these webinars is gonna make very little sense if you don't have the context from the course material ahead of time. Back to my wolf metaphor. The second thing I think we've been struggling with is that our pack leaders, the ones at the back, have been doing a lot of talking, which is great, but I want to make sure we're getting the whole pack. So I'm going to pace myself a little bit differently today to make sure I'm addressing the whole pack, not just the SBC veterans who are making sure there's no threats sneaking up on us in the forest or the woods or wherever it is that wolves live. Any questions so far? No confusion so far? I haven't lost anyone with my wolf metaphor? Great. So let's spend a little bit of time reviewing. Let me just get myself a little bit situated here. So let's start from really just from square one. So what is SBC? SBC, sorry, 1 second. SBC, it's an evidence-informed casework practice model. It prioritizes partnership with families, focuses on pragmatic solutions to difficult situations, and notices and celebrates change. We're always partnering with families. It's not case planner versus client, like it's a UFC fight or anything like that. We are partnering with families to identify what the issues are and focus on the pragmatic, realistic, specific solutions to these difficult situations. What SBC does, it combines what we know from research on family development, clinical behavior change, and child welfare outcomes to help you stay focused on the 3 key elements of SBC. Creating partnership, focusing on partnership on the patterns of everyday family life that directly relate to threats of safety, and we target solutions specific to the prevention skills needed to create safety and reduce risk. So how does SBC define a problem? What does SBC say a problem is?
Well, in my opinion, I don't know if I'm, wrong with this, but a problem is, for me, is when you don't have the, when something is not working in the front,
You're absolutely correct. And when we see that something is not working, what is that often related to?
Be related to the individual or the family as a group.
Yeah, definitely. And more often than not, all of these problems are rooted in just very normal, not special, everyday life situations. Let's take potty training, for example, right? Potty training is a normal developmental challenge that a lot of families have. If any of you have had no difficulties potty training a small person, God bless, because I can't think of anyone in my universe who has had a small person and said potty training was a breeze. I can also think of some people in the universe who have been so stressed out, like just when you think this kid is not going to have another accident, they have another accident. And some people have trouble managing the stress that brings up. So we want to validate, yes, potty training is extraordinarily stressful for everyone. There's nothing special about you because you're having trouble, nothing wrong with you because you're having trouble with potty training. Something we do have to work on is the way you operationalize the stress that puts your kids at risk. So we're bringing it back to the developmental problem of stress around potty training, but we're not saying you're bad, you did a bad thing, you should just get your together and potty train your kid and not feel stressed. Yes, so we're normalizing the stress, not normalizing the abuse or neglect that the management of the stress might lead to. That is how SBC defines problems. They are everyday challenges that are normal. Can everyday challenges be stressful? Yes or no, team? Yes, of course, right? Just morning routines, staying sober. All of our issues that we're addressing are they're normal, everyday, difficult tasks in the life of a family. That is how SBC defines problems and issues.
So it's like we're not excusing the behavior. We are addressing the behavior, but we are validating that they felt a certain way, or like the stress or the personal hurdles and emotional part, which I feel like for all of our families, when it comes to individual, I mean, as long as they might have the other cases stuff, but I feel like for all of them, it is the personal hurdles and the emotional factors that they have to,
Yeah, right. I would argue that if we're skipping around here a little bit, but that's okay. If we're talking about our individual level outcomes, and we see that someone has substance use issues, that's not going to exist in a vacuum. There's some kind of personal hurdle that this person has had to overcome in conjunction with their substance use issues. Okay. Some SBC, one of my favorite things about SBC, my favorite line from SBC is sometimes the most simple things are the most radical. Simplicity is radical. So what does this mean to you? The most simple thing is the most radical. What does that mean to you?
It's like the analogy of like the what is it, the feather on top of the horse, well, we have it the straw on top of the horse, the camel's back, where it's like the camel fell, but not because of the straw, which is the simplest thing, but because of everything else that it's carrying as well. So maybe that's the breaking point, like the potty training was the breaking point, even though it's not like they're the biggest deal. If that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm picking up what you're putting down right now. I'm buying what you're selling for sure. So what you're suggesting is like, it's never the potty training that's the main issue. We need to do a little digging here to figure out what are all the layers below the potty training that's making this caregiver unable to manage their stress about the potty training in a healthy way. Yeah, and that's one way to look at it for sure. An example that someone offered this morning was if we have a case, right? Because a child is consistently late to school, maybe they're missing services in the morning, but then we find out they're going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning every night. It's a very simple solution to, maybe a solution. We're not jumping to conclusions here, but perhaps a simple solution we might offer this family to manage this problem.
So we gotta find out why the child is going to sleep late.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the first one that we had to look at. And
Mhm.
in terms of if he's living with mom and dad, maybe the way one is addressing the problem, maybe too soft, and the other one is not, you know, maybe the personality there, like clicking in terms
Mhm.
of, you know, coming to an agreement. So that could
Yep.
be, we have to look into that too.
Yep. So perhaps putting the child to bed earlier than 1 a.m. for sure. If we have a young, so my folks in the room who have either children or experience working with children, if we go to a kid who has consistently been going to bed at 1 a.m. and we say, okay, Chandler, now you're going to start going to bed at 9 p.m. Is this going to be like a miracle cure for all of this family's problems? No, of course not, right? Because what's Chandler going to do that first night that he now has to go to bed at 9 a.m.?
Tantrum, a big tantrum.
He's gonna fight.
Tantrum, fight it.
He's not gonna be happy.
Spin around in the bedroom, find around whatever electronics are lying around. He's gonna act out, right? And that's okay. We want to normalize that because change is hard, especially for little ones. But what do children thrive on the most? Starts with a C and ends in consistency.
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 Structure.
Structure, right? Consistency, reliability, and predictability. So we want to validate the frustration that the family might be having with the new routine. What we also want to reinforce is that you, caregiver, are the adult and you are setting this boundary. Something else we might want to do if this is the specific issue that we're tackling is say, let's say what's today, Wednesday, you're gonna say, okay, Chandler, starting on Friday, we're gonna start going to bed at 8 p.m. Chandler might say, all right. Maybe she'll forget, maybe we'll just go back to normal. And then on Thursday, we're gonna say, Chandler, you know, it's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday, and tomorrow you're gonna go to bed at 9 p.m. All right, well, I slept a whole day to, you know, stay up late, blah, blah, blah. And now it's Friday, the big day, the big show is about to happen. We're going to say, okay, Chandler, today's the day. We're going to get ready for bed. We're going to take a bath. We're going to read a book and we're going to go to bed at 9 p.m. Do we think sweet baby angel Chandler is all of a sudden going to say, you know what, Mom, you're right. I need structure. I need boundaries. Thank you so much for putting these in place. I know it's for my own well-being. Is this going to be Chandler's response?
No.
No, of course not. Chandler's used to partying until 1 a.m. So going to bed at 9 is going to be very challenging for him, and that's okay. What we have done as caregivers is created the predictability. And then it's also up to caregiver to be incredibly consistent. 9 p.m., maybe 9:30 on the weekends. And once we get further into the routine, things will start to feel more normal for Chandler. Any confusion? So yeah, Raina, go ahead.
We always, I mean, I've always told my clients, like usually the beginning of transitioning, whether it's good or bad, you know, the beginning of change is always going to be the roughest. But if we don't stay consistent, then it's just going to be rough, back up and down, like back and forth, and you're going to be even more exhausted.
Absolutely.
Really. So right now you might be feeling like, what the heck, he's fighting me. Like, even though you gave him that consistency, which is really great, like that, like from Wednesday, you're telling him Thursday, you're telling him he's still probably not going to be in bed at 9. It might be 10 or 11, but that 2-hour fight and him seeing, and him seeing that, you know, you're not giving, like, you really mean it, will start changing things slowly, but he's still going to continue to test him because he hasn't had that consistency before.
Absolutely.
So he is going to continue to test, and then hopefully, you know, you'll get to a point, but the beginning part is really the hardest in transition.
How might you respond to me if I'm a caregiver and I say, I can't do this. It's been a week. He's still not going to bed in time. He's still screaming his head off once he goes into his bedroom. It's been a whole week and nothing has changed. I'm so uncomfortable, so frustrated. How might you respond to me in that moment? You told me this was going to be a simple and radical, and There's nothing simple about this.
Normalize it, like say, it's okay for you to feel stressful. This is a challenging time for you and the child, just so the parent can feel like, okay, it's normal for me to feel this way and not feel like they're a bad person for feeling that way.
Yep, there is nothing special about you for feeling frustrated by this. This is something, if you want to self-disclose, that's up to you. I felt super frustrated when I had to make a similar change. Many families I've worked with, we'll get into our interviewing techniques in a hot second, but a simple solution, simple and easy are not the same thing. We've identified a simple step that families can take, but simplicity and ease are not the same thing in SBC. It's going to be hard, and starting anything new is hard and uncomfortable, and that's okay. We are here.
Maria, I do have a question based on normalization. So let's say that you normalize a situation, right? Mm-hmm. And the child continue doing the same thing, the same behavior. How long can you stop normalizing the whole situation? Because then you're creating a pattern, and the child may not be, getting up to go to school early. So how long can you wait until you say, okay, wait a minute. I already tried normalization, but it's not working. Mm-hmm.
So what do we think? What do we think an appropriate amount of time is to give we'll talk about action plans quite a bit today, but what's like an appropriate amount of time to let a plan rock before we say, all right, this clearly isn't working?
I mean, isn't it that like it takes 90 days to create a routine or something like that? What is it?
So it's like the Malcolm Gladwell, like 1,000 hours kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think this is certainly a case-by-case basis.
Right.
I think if we say, okay, so our plan is going to be at 7 p.m., it's bath time. At 7:30, we're going to have some quiet time, read a book, and then at 8 p.m., it's bedtime. This should work, right? Should is an interesting word because things don't always work out the way they should. That being said, if you're seeing that your plan is going on and on and on, there's something not working, revisit the plan. Does it maybe need to start the bedtime routine at 6 to really have the full opportunity to unwind? Does Chandler need some kind of, does Chandler need to run 2 laps around the house to get that last burst of energy out of him before he lays down for bed? Is there anything medically that's preventing Chandler from going to sleep? We can always reassess the plan. We'll talk more about this later, but it's a living document. It's not etched in stone. We can always go back and revisit and make some changes here and there that will help this family. Okay, how many milestones is SBC divided into? 4. Yep, 4 milestones to SBC. What's the first milestone? If the word milestone is confusing for you, think about it as phases of case planning. It's all is very, very similar, all the same thing. In SBC, we call them the 4 milestones. What's milestone 1? What are we working on in milestone 1?
Building a conscience for change.
Yeah, absolutely, Rosalind. Thank you. So we're building consensus towards change. We're sorting out the situations of concern. The question that we hope to answer in milestone 1, building consensus, is what is not working and how can we be helpful? If we have identified that intimate partner violence is not an issue for this family, we're not going to come in with all of our IPV skills and work on that. We take the time to sort out what is working and what the issue is and use that to inform how we're going to move forward. How do we build consensus? What do we do?
By people support.
You say that again.
Inviting the supporter, the family comfortable.
Yep, we might have a family team meeting, an FTC. We might participate in a child safety conference. A lot of information gathering at this stage, absolutely, to figure out what is not working and how we can be helpful. How else? So let me ask it this way. What are the interviewing techniques we use in Milestone 1? What are our consensus building interviewing techniques?
Tracking the events.
Yep, so tracking the sequence of events. Walk me through the morning that, the events in the morning, what happened the night before. How did we get here? Right? This is not finding out like, oh, Timothy, you were the one. It was you, Timothy, who abused and neglected your kids. Not so concerned about that right now. I'm really, really not. It's because that's shamey. It's inducing guilt. Not about it. Walk me through the sequence of events that led us here today. Calm tone, inviting, curiosity, none of that like, you should have done this, you should have done that kind of language. Tracking the sequence of events. What's our next interviewing technique to build consensus?
Separating intention from action.
Yeah, Chandler, do you want to give me an example of how you might separate intention from action?
So one thing you could say, I guess, is like, I know you didn't intend to withhold your children from attending school, and that it's just really hard for you to get them to go on time or something like that.
For sure. Zoom is really hard. A lot of people are struggling with this. I know the intention was not to keep your kids from attending school, but you did, right? Leave out the but you did. But yeah, absolutely. I know the intention was not to keep your kids from going to medical appointments. You obviously love them and value their health. Let's talk about a way that we can help you get to medical appointments for your kids. What's our next interviewing technique? So we have tracking,
You say normalizing?
Normalizing. So we're not ever normalizing the abuse, right? And like, yeah, sometimes I get frustrated with my kids too, and I smack them in the head every now and then. It's normal, right? Parents, some parents just hit their kids. That's normal. That's okay. No, ma'am. We are not normalizing the abuse. We are wow, it is really snowing right now. I don't know if anyone's looking outside. It's very beautiful. We're not normalizing the abuse. We are normalizing the feeling. We are normalizing the frustration. We are normalizing the stress. We are normalizing the sadness, whatever the feeling is, we are validating that and normalizing it. We are not normalizing the outcome. We're not normalizing the abuse, neglect. We're not saying, yeah, a lot of parents are frustrated with Zoom. Just do it when you can, right? No. That's not the territory we're entering. We want to normalize the frustration with virtual learning. Does this make sense? Is there any confusion? There's no shame and confusion right now. Anyone's feeling confused, please let me know. And I'm happy to slow things down a little bit.
So are you saying normalize the emotion, not the behavior?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm normalizing the fact that everyone has a lot on their plate right now, and perhaps accessing course material for SBC is not everyone's tip-top priority. But we still got to do it, right? What's our last one? We have tracking, we have
Searching for exceptions.
searching for exceptions. Yes, thank you, Adelaide. I couldn't remember the ones we had already said. What does it mean to search for exceptions?
On days when things did actually work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things aren't terrible 100% of the time. If anyone is saying things are terrible 100% of the time, and my family doesn't have any strengths, and these kids are always bugging out on each other, they're lying to you. There are going to be times where things do go well. Families might need a bit of coaching to help identify those times, but you want to explore what the circumstances were around that particular time when things did go a little bit better. We're not asking for when things went perfectly. We're not asking for things went 100% seamless. We're asking for when things went a little bit better, a little bit.
So I have
yeah, go ahead, Raina.
I have the thing with searching for exceptions, I feel like it applies, but we have some cases where it's like, for example, for specifically medical, where it's like, well, they didn't, the searching for exceptions was they didn't have a child with a medical situation. You know what I mean? Like, let's say they had like 2 children and they were, you know, they're healthy, they don't have any medical, and now they have a 3rd child that has cerebral palsy, and now you're seeing like GI specialists, neurologists,
Sure.
like all these things. So because of that event, that's when everything kind of blew up. Or like, for example, with teenagers, I mean, I know that it happens gradually, but for parents, it feels like overnight. They're just like, they were just like loving yesterday, and tomorrow they're rebellious, and I hate you and you suck, and all of that. So that's where I find it difficult with clients, because I'm like, well, they were 9 back then. Of course they love you, you know, and now they're 15. Of course they hate you. So, or like with the child that wasn't born, like, do we have to apply all of these things? Like maybe normalizing would just
Good
be
question.
enough.
Yeah, so SBC is not a, let me check this box to make sure I normalize. Let me check this box to make sure I searched for exceptions. That's not what SBC is, not a one size fits all kind of thing. We're not going to apply every interviewing technique to every single nitty gritty situation. What we can do is say, I'll use the 2 examples you used, Raina. So if I am a parent and my child just like, I am just the center of my child's universe, and then all of a sudden my child is 14 and wants nothing to do with me, what's a feeling I might have about that?
Like loss,
sadness, rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if I'm a person with poor coping mechanisms, I might not handle this well. I might not be able to say, this is a teenager, this is sometimes what teenagers do. I might yell at my kid. I might hit my kid for being disrespectful. I might not be able to connect disrespect being developmentally normal for a teenager.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to address the behavior, of course, but I'm not just going to say like, yeah, sure, you can walk all over me. That's not teaching a kid appropriate boundaries or anything like that. But perhaps I've felt rejection and loss and sadness before. And I might say to a parent, how have you dealt with rejection in the past in a healthy way? How have you dealt with loss before? Because that's what this is. This is a loss. This is a loss of your child, not loss of your child, of course, but a loss, a relationship that you once had with your kid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's normal. It's normal to feel that way. And how have you dealt with that kind of emotion in the past in a way that didn't put your young person at risk of abuse and neglect?
Okay.
So those are our interviewing techniques. When I say, what's the language of consensus? What is the language of consensus? For crafting a consensus summary, what might you say to me?
Say that, you know, by watching the video, I noticed the guy saying and the girl saying, I know that, you know, blah, 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 blah. I know. So it's like they know the situation that, you know, that is familiar to them, like accepting the situation.
Yeah, so I think what you're going back to is perhaps normalizing, validating someone's feelings. But when we're crafting a
inclusive, it's inclusive. Like we are working on this, summarizing what they want to work on and how we can help as well, because they're the experts of their life.
When I say, so a consensus summary, right? It sounds to me like the old plan for addressing XYZ is not working. My hope is that we can work together to develop a new plan to address XYZ in a healthy way. Old plan, new plan is the language of consensus. We have all identified that this old plan, this crummy plan that you have for addressing potty training, it's just not working, and that's okay. But my hope is that we can work together to create a new plan to potty train your kid so you're not getting stressed out about it anymore, and we can move forward in a healthy way. Old plan, new plan. Not old parent who was a terrible parent. Now we're going to make you a shiny new parent who's better for your kids, right? You're not a bad parent because this thing happened. It's about the plan to address it. Any questions, any confusion about that? The benefit of framing it around the plan instead of the parent is you're avoiding some of that shame talk. Like, you should have done this and now you're going to do this. Should is shame language, right? We tend to be big, I call them should heads, right? We're not telling anyone what they could have, should have, and would have done because we weren't there. We're not going to blame them for what went wrong. Not going back to Timothy, you were the bad parent, right? It's all about the plan to address the issue, not about the parent. I say, give me an example of what's the acronym we use for individual level issues?
Cases, P.
Yep. So cases, sometimes P, like E, A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. Cases, sometimes P. We'll talk about the P a little bit. What does C stand for? C in cases. What does the C stand for? This is an open book review, by the way. So if you have notes in front of you that you'd like to refer to, that's totally fine.
Criminal background.
Yeah.
Yeah, so any kind of criminal activity, it's never the responsibility of a child or another person to keep someone from having criminal activity. What's the A? What's the A in cases?
Like anger and stuff like that.
Yep, it's never my child's responsibility to help me from getting angry. I am the adult. I need to have better self-control skills than a child does. What about the S?
Substance abuse?
So, yes, hi Jessica. Substance abuse and misuse. Absolutely. It's not anyone else's responsibility. My sobriety is not anyone else's responsibility but my own. So it's an individual level. So we have criminal activity, anger and control, substance use. What's the E?
Emotional instability.
Yep, emotional stability. So if I have a history if I have a trauma history or something that's an event that happened that's particularly triggering for me, anything that's going to impact my emotional stability, that's on me to handle. If I am particularly upset by something, it's not Adelina's responsibility to make sure I'm okay. I might identify Adelina as someone I trust, that I want to check in with, but it's not Adelina's responsibility to get me to therapy. I am a grown adult. It doesn't always feel like that, but it is my responsibility as the adult to get myself to therapy if that's something that I would need. What's our second S? What's our second S in cases?
Sexual misconduct.
Yeah, sexual misconduct. So if I have a history of sexual abuse, sexual assault, truly no one else's problem but mine, right? That is on me to address through a specific intervention, whatever intervention you might refer me to. My child, not my spouse, not my friend from down the block. It's no one's responsibility to address but me. Other people might distance themselves from me. That's their prerogative. They might want to draw that boundary, and that's okay. But it is my responsibility to fix this problem. What makes these individual level issues and not family level issues? I repeated it quite a few times when we were going through the acronym.
It's on the caretaker to resolve the problem.
Yep.
The only one that's like a little tricky when it comes, I feel like they're both individual and family, which is DV.
Yeah.
So I feel like I both like.
Yeah, absolutely. So we might have an individual level outcome for the aggressor in the IPV, and we might have a family level outcome for around a safety plan for the family. Because if that safety plan involves getting kids out of the house, we must incorporate the other caregiver. Any of our individual level issues, totally on the individual to address. So if I say, if the issue is getting kids to school on time, would that be a family or individual level issue? Yeah, family, right? Because it takes more than one to tango in this issue, right? It takes more than just a caregiver to get kids out to school on time. What about keeping a home clean?
Yeah, I have a question before you move on. So
Sure, Oscar, go ahead.
What happened when they are teenagers? Because I have families, you know, that the mother is sick and they have these teenagers, they have to go to school, high school, but it's not like, you know, the mother can't do anything because she's so sick that she can, you know, she can provide supervision properly. So what happened in those cases?
That's really tough. What might other people do in this situation? If you have a caregiver who is quite ill, they have a teenager who is refusing to go to school.
It's still a family issue. So maybe reaching out to extended family supports, maybe that's when we start. If they do not have family supports, that's when we do the like service, like maybe a home health aide, service providers, people that can support her with that. I don't know, because it's still a family. I mean, she is their mom, you know.
This particular case that I have, there's no family support, there's no friend support. It's like she's on her own, you know.
Yeah, that's really tough. I would look into more formal supports, and then it's a family level issue because mom will have to let the support into the home. Children will still have to go to school. This is one of those simple solutions that's going to be uncomfortable first. And they still, at the end of the day, spoiler alert, they still might not go to school. It's actually quite possible they still won't go to school, but we have done our due diligence to collaborate with the family to create the action plan. And a lot of like psychoeducation about teens with mom.
Holding also the teens accountable and responsible as well. They have to understand that this is an issue for the family as well. So, I mean, if they obviously have the development, and I mean, if you're talking to a teenager that's like severely autistic or developmentally delayed, that's a different thing. But if they, I mean, I feel like with your case, Oscar, the mom is the one that's sick and the teenagers are not, and they're pretty cognitively fine. So involving them, because it's also their actions, they have to understand the accountability as well.
Oh, I understand that, but you know what? So sometimes talking to teenagers, it's like one thing goes
pulling teeth
and then out the other. So it's tough.
But that's where the consistency and the structure, I mean, they're still children. As much as they want to be grown, they're still they're still children, and they do require as much as, I mean, that's what I said. I was like, listen, we're not grown yet, you know, and grown has cool stuff, but we also have stuff that we have to do. You know, I have to go to work. I mean, trying to relate it, trying to talk. I mean, I feel like being honest with teenagers is so important because they're not going to fall for the BS. They will catch you. And I feel, obviously, in a respectful way, you know, having that consistency and having these conversations of, you know, there are going to be consequences, because that is a reality, of not in a threatening way, but just in a reality type of way. It's very important to have this discussion with them, because it's not an excuse. I mean, they could be like, well, I'm angry. Well, it's not an excuse. It's kind of like saying to the parents, oh, it's okay that you abused them because you were angry. It's not an excuse. We have to try, you know, in a nicer therapeutic way. I'm just being fast right now.
Yeah, and by just whoever the case planner is. So I had a client once who was 13 years old, and for the first, like, I want to say 7 times that I showed up there, he laid face down on the couch, wouldn't even look at me, let alone speak to me. And I think eventually he said, okay, this woman's not going anywhere. She's not going to leave me alone. So, and I truly thought that I was going to have to terminate with this kid because we were not doing anything. When I tell you he would lie face down on that couch for 40 whole minutes, that's exactly what he did, right? But I knew that this was a young person who had seen a lot of caseworkers before, a lot of different faces that didn't look like him. I really needed to validate the frustration he was feeling. And he knew that I was still going to show up next week. So I gave him an ounce of predictability and consistency. And eventually he opened up a little bit. And for this person opening up a little bit, whew, it was like someone else telling me their whole life story. But that's a very good question, Oscar. Thank you for bringing it up. What is a genogram? I'm going to move this along a little bit here. What's a genogram? Someone I haven't heard from. I'm going to come to, if you're not a call on randomly person, that's fine. Just let me know. I'm going to come to Karen. Karen, talk to me about a genogram. I, of course, can't hear you for some reason, Karen. I trust you're answering this question beautifully, but I'm going to call on someone else because I can't hear you. So I'm going to come to Monica. Monica, talk to me about a genogram.
Like creating a family tree. So, and it's for 3 generations. So you have the parents, the children, and the grandparents.
Yep, for sure. So it's a bit like a family tree, but what's special about a genogram? Why do it?
You get to see who's the supports,
Mm-hmm.
well, family supports. I know that I always used to ask about like medical conditions or substance use, history, meaning if the grandparents had it, any history. You also get to see, I guess, you know, exactly who lives in the home. I think also
Relationship.
Say that again, Marie.
Relationship.
Yes.
Between the family members.
So sometimes our icons, our symbols that we use will show, to connect people, will show what kind of relationship they have. Absolutely. Waskar, what were you going to say?
I was saying about the resources that the family may have.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, if we have a parent who's really feeling stressed out by the nighttime routine, by doing the genogram, we might be able to identify someone who can come in and maybe tap them out, give them a breather before the nighttime routine so they are showing up as their better self. Maybe not their best self, but their better self. What else is significant about a genogram? Why do we do them? Richard, why do we do genograms?
To also identify like the cultural supports of the family. It's just identify any supportive people that can assist with meeting the family's goals.
Yeah, definitely, right? So we're not saying, if I am client and I come to you, Richard, and I say, well, I have this friend who's really like my sister, it's not then Richard's responsibility to say, well, no, a genogram is only for family, only for biological family. I'm telling you that this person is a potential resource and support, like chef's kiss. What a beautiful thing that is, that we can have more people in the network of this caregiver.
Friends, family.
And then the cultural aspects can also provide us some more insight about, like, for example, if it is a school thing, it's like, do they deem school as important? If it is a medical, like other, like what they deem as important and what they deem as a priority for them.
Even when it comes to medicals, do they also, you know, like, you know, a lot of people are into like spirituality. They might use like herbal people. And that's something to also consider as well. That could be a support for them as well.
Yeah, if I'm your client and I'm coming to you and I'm saying, I don't, you know, my mom, she was around, but she never really sent me to school. Hello, this is giving us some context about why school might not be a priority for this specific family. I didn't go to school. I turned out okay. Why do my kids need to go to school? Especially if it's on the computer. What are they learning on Zoom, right?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Marie, please.
No, I was going to say the disciplinary method also. Like, you know, for some culture, it's okay to get a spank or beat up, and then some culture is not okay.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not allowed here. Yeah.
really focusing on the family too, right? Because I come from a culture where spanking is encouraged, right? But my family just didn't do it. So we might have these preconceived notions. We want to keep them in mind. We want to keep that in mind, but understanding that it's not going to be like a universal truth for everyone from this culture. Okay, that's milestone 1. We've done a lot in milestone 1. We have interviewed our families to build consensus. We have searched for those beautiful exceptions when things weren't 100% terrible. We've identified what is not working and how we might be able to help you. What's the language of consensus? Remind me.
Old plan, new plan.
Old plan, new plan. Thank you, Danielle. So it sounds like your old plan for doing this is not working. My hope is that we can work together to figure out a new plan to keep everyone safe. Great. What's milestone 2? What is milestone 2 in SBC?
Creating outcomes, I think is called.
Yep, absolutely. So we're getting organized, creating outcomes. How many parts are there to each outcome?
The who, what, and why.
Yes, Chandler. Thank you so much. So who, what, and why. This is all funneling into our material for today, which is action plan. Who is going to use this plan? Because we've identified that there is an issue here, right? So who is going to use the plan? What is this plan? And the why is, why are we even doing this, right? We're not doing it for our health. We're not doing it for, to win brownie points with our program director. We're not doing it to be loyal to the model of SBC. What's the purpose of this plan? What is the safety purpose? Why are we doing it? So who, what, and why. So who can give me an example of what this outcome might sound like? I'll start you off by saying, Miss Davis will use. Maybe that'll trigger some memory for people. So think who, what, and why. So I've identified the who for you. I hope you don't mind, Danielle, I'm picking on you.
It's fine. So the what would be?
So Miss Davis.
Plan. So Ms. Davis will use the not get angry plan to not beat Billy when he doesn't get up on time.
Yeah, right. We might want to finesse the language a little bit, but you got the idea, right? So Miss Davis will use her don't get angry plan to not beat Billy when he doesn't get up on time. We've addressed the who, the what, and the why. Someone give me one more for a family level outcome.
Miss Davis will call the school to inquire about the report card.
So this one will start with the family will use, right? So the family will use what? What's the what? What are we naming this plan?
The school plan.
The family will use the school plan, and what's our safety purpose around school?
Attendance.
Yeah, attendance,
And
right?
work.
So the family will use the school plan to finish it for me.
Track the children's academic well-being in school.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. What else about milestone 2? This is where we're focusing on, we're identifying our FLOs and our ILOs, right? We're not throwing a million outcome statements and action plans at families about issues that are not directly related to the safety and well-being of the children. I'm not creating an action plan about housing. I'm not creating an action plan about noisy neighbors. I'm not creating an action plan around, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old arguing, right? But if the 3 and the 5-year-old arguing is so upsetting to me as a caregiver that I start hitting them, I'll plan around that, right? 3 and 5-year-old arguing, beyond normal, right? Any questions or confusion about anything that we just reviewed?
I don't have, Maria, I don't have any questions. I mean, I've been reading a lot on it, but the staff actually, I should encourage them, you know, to ask questions here because they've been asking a lot of questions like for ILO and FLO. So please, if you're not clear, Maria is here. You know, you can ask, please feel free to ask her. You know, she's not, Maria is the director, but she's not, she's very humble. She's very nice.
There's no shame and confusion, truly.
Yeah, please ask.
No shame and confusion.
I feel like the issue, I think that what case planners have said before, and remains to be a consistent issue, is that where what you were saying, like the housing, like these other things, they tend to come in and like it becomes a conflicting issue, or I don't know, maybe I don't know if it's a distraction, but like
it becomes part of the problem.
Yeah, it does become part of the problem, and to separate it sometimes might be difficult.
Sure.
I mean, guys, what do you think? But that's what I remember a lot of people.
So Reina, just to clarify, your observation is that sometimes things that we might call distractors, like housing, might become the focus because there's focus on at that point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like SSI or housing or finance. I mean, finances are important. So, I mean, unless they don't have money for food, it really becomes a huge priority, right? But like, if they're able to manage everything, it's not, medical is what our priority is. You know what I mean? And that's, but for the families, it might not be seen, it might be seen as equal priority, I guess.
Sure.
And that's where a lot of the times we get sucked into that drama of like the OOP with the DV or the SSI or you know, all those extra things that are floating, all those extra bubbles that are floating around, where we're trying to be like, no, this is the bubble that we want to focus on, but it's just not happening.
Right. So the SSI is a really good example because ideally we're working with families and doing some education as well on how to get their own needs met. Because once we close the case, issues don't stop because we're not involved anymore, right? Life goes on, things are going to come up. And ideally what we're doing, there's always like beautiful time to do all of this, is providing some, we're empowering families to know how to do this on their own. It often, and you know, feel free to push back on this, but it often feels like if we don't do it, it's not going to get done. So we do a lot of, I promise you, I have also been guilty of this in the past. We do a lot of hand-holding, a lot of sometimes enabling, because it feels like, maybe I'm projecting here, but I see a lot of nodding, so I'm going to assume you all might feel a little bit the same way. It feels like it's a reflection on us if a form isn't submitted on time, or if the SSI appointment doesn't go well. Let me relieve you of this expectation. It is not a reflection on you. What you have done is, Rich, are you snapping? It's not a reflection on you. It is not. I promise you it is not. What you are doing, I'll use the word should, even though I hate the word should, empower our families to be able to do these things once we are no longer in the picture. I'm getting a little tangential now, but that's okay. Because Richard's not going to be around forever. Emerly's not going to be around forever to help this family at every appointment. So what we can be doing is empowering families and giving them the knowledge on how to do this on their own. And we can do that at the same time as we're addressing our FLOs and our ILOs. This is not to say that we must only focus on the main issue at hand, right? We want to stay focused on what's going to move our case towards closure, but things happen, right? Normal, everyday life situations are going to come up. And if a family not having enough income to feed their children is our issue, that's something we want to plan around for sure, because that is abuse and neglect. You know, not at the hands of the parent, circumstantially. Yes, that I would say that's abuse and neglect, and that's something we want to plan around. We want to make sure our families are having their basic needs met. You know, family will collaborate with Case Aid on their get that shmoney plan to have their needs met. Absolutely, that's something we could plan around. Okay, if any other confusion, I will reiterate, there is no shame in confusion at all.
Maria, I have a question. One of my case planners, she asked me if we have like a format of writing the progress note for the ILO and the FLO. Do we have a format for that?
A format? I don't believe so, but that's a great question for Sherry.
We have a guideline.
Yeah, we have a guideline how to write the progress note, you know, SBC, like an SBC template that we
No, that
ourselves.
that
However, FLO and ILO, of course, it's inside the note.
Dependent on case by case.
Yeah.
I mean, we can provide, can we provide like examples of like how a note, sometimes people like, I need like, for example, like examples on how, I'm not going to copy and paste it, but like, just to see how it looks like. Is there a possibility to do that?
The way that I told my case plan is like.
Are you asking me, Reina? I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. I mean, maybe we can do our own.
We're rapidly running out of time, so I am going to shift into talking about milestone 3, which is what the course material was about for today. So let's spend some time talking about action plans. Give me 1 second to just situate myself here. So now we're at milestone 3, our specific action plans. What is an action plan? Talk to me, team. What is an action plan?
Well, to me, an action plan is listing all the problem and how we're going to be able to tackle all those problems, you know, step by step to come up with a solution.
Yeah, yep. It's not a safety plan. It is a set of steps that we are going to take to identify, prevent, and escape the thing that is activating for us. So let's take some time, just take a second. This whole share screen thing. Ooh, not that screen. iPie. So when we are talking about prevention skills, relapse prevention skills, we must be able to identify a high risk or difficult situation, identify the early warning signals, prevent the high risk situation, interrupt, and escape. So let's start with identifying the high risk or difficult situation. Give me an example of a high risk or difficult situation. We could stick with morning routine. Someone give me an example of one.
I guess waking up late and trying to get children to school, get yourself ready for work.
Is that a high risk, stressful situation for all involved? Thank you, Danielle. So we have identified that this high risk situation is the hustle bustle in the morning, the chaos of trying to get everyone out for school. Maybe this makes us feel anxious, frustrated, stressed out. What are some early warning signals? So we're not quite in the danger zone just yet, but we might be starting to feel some of the early warning signals that I'm getting there, right? What might some of these warning signals be, just for the sake of our example? What are some early warning signals of stress?
Maybe anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah. So we skipped ahead a little bit, but we want to be very specific in our action plans, right? Because anxiety for Maria and anxiety for Jessica might be two very different things. We're not talking about like DSM, concrete diagnosis of an anxiety disorder, right? Because that's specific. But what are some specific warning signs for anxiety?
Muscle tension.
Yep, some people feel
lightheadedness.
What else? Some other early warning signs.
Heartbeat.
Yep, so if your heart is racing. Was that you?
I was gonna say headaches, migraines.
Yep, headaches. I'm feeling the tension build up in my head and my muscles. My heart is racing. Any other early warning signs for anxiety?
Maybe they find themselves like being more reactive or like talking louder than usual.
Yep. If I'm anxious.
Feeling flushed, breathing.
Yep. Breathing rapidly.
Shaking.
Flush, shaking. Yep.
For sure. The hot feeling in your face.
Oh, you feel it in your cheeks. Absolutely. For sure. So we have identified, and yep. Anyone else want to say something? I get very excited.
I was gonna say when I'm anxious, that's me, in particular. I don't hear people. I'm just like, don't talk to me.
It's also good to know that when Mascar is anxious, perhaps not the best time to have a conversation about something serious with him, right? We want to wait until the anxiety has passed. And this is like a pretty universal truth that when I am at my most anxious, just need some time. Great. So we have identified what some of these early warning signs are. How might we prevent them? How might we prevent a high risk situation? What are some things we can do to prevent the high risk? Just as a reminder, the high risk situation we identified is the stress of trying to get out on time when we've all slept late. How might we prevent this?
Step out from the situation for a little bit.
Yep. If I have a partner, I might say I need 2 minutes to just kind of collect myself, reel it in, and I can come back to this, right? Even though we're running late, it's okay. Late is not the worst thing in the world. That's what I tell myself all the time.
Maybe like some kind of regimented morning routine that like, so like then they don't find themselves like getting stressed and anxious about running late.
Yeah, so maybe like multiple alarms. If your alarm is on your phone, plug in your phone across the room so you actually have to get up out of bed to turn it off. Yep. Other ways to prevent the high risk situation. We have stepping in.
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath, right? Take one, if you don't have time to tag in a partner, right? If you don't have time to tag in a partner and take a 5-minute break, take a 5-second break and go. Right? A single deep breath is very recalibrating for your system, for sure. Take a deep breath, take a step out. We'll make some changes to the maybe the nighttime routine so we're waking up on time, for sure. Let's say I've identified all these warning signs, but we're running so late that I don't have time to take a break. We're not worried about the plan right now because we're in the muck of it at this point. How do we interrupt some of the high risk situations? We're in the middle of the hustle of getting ready for school now, and I'm stressed, but how do we interrupt the cycle?
I think prepping before, so you could avoid lateness, just, prepping ahead of time.
So let me ask you this. If I am in the middle of my stress response to the chaos of getting ready in the morning, speaking to someone who just said he doesn't even hear anything when he's anxious, at this moment, am I thinking about my beautiful little action plan that I've created with my case planner and saying, well, maybe next time we'll just get up earlier in the morning and blah, 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 blah. We are mid routine right now. How am I going to interrupt the stress cycle in a way that can still get my kids out to school?
I'm saying that's a good one. That's a good question.
I guess like you were saying, Maria, stop. Sorry. Adelina.
Okay, Danielle,
you,
go ahead, please.
How you were saying, Maria, how you stop and tell yourself like being late is not the worst thing in the world. So I guess stop and talk to yourself and say like, hey, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Try to do better tomorrow.
Right. What would have a better outcome here? Being a few minutes late or screaming at my kids to get ready? Or hitting my kids because they're not getting ready?
Yeah, being a little late.
Right. You want to weigh your options here, right? Say, listen, Maria, do some like positive self-talk. Being late, we're all going to make it out alive. Take a couple more minutes this morning. We're going to be fine. Yeah. Some positive self-talk is never a bad thing. Let's say I have not prevented the high-risk situation. I have not interrupted the high-risk situation, and we are deep in the red zone at this point. I gotta escape it. What might I do? What might be an action plan for escape?
We might say, tell someone how I'm feeling at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So through, perhaps through our construction of our genogram, we have identified, okay, well, Danielle is super stressed in the morning, but she has an aunt who lives next door who has committed to popping on by if she's feeling really activated, really triggered to a point that she's going to lash out at her kids. Maybe Danielle's only been in therapy for 6 weeks, hasn't really learned many coping mechanisms just yet. So we need to keep her aunt in the loop about what's going on here, right? Pending Danielle has a relationship with her aunt that she can be open and vulnerable about these things. Yeah. Popping a movie in for your kids. If your kids are particularly drawn to Frozen, like my niece and nephew once were, just pop that in for 10 minutes, step out, anything to not put your child's safety and well-being at risk. You could yell into a pillow, do whatever you got to do that's not going to jeopardize the safety and well-being of your young person. Great. So let's look at an action plan. Let's actually not look at an action plan just yet. We're going to look at the cycle of patterns and exits. Where are we? When I say I have an embarrassing amount of tabs open right now, it's not an exaggeration. So here we have a cycle of high-risk situations for abuse and neglect. And this is what will happen if we don't have any kind of intervention, because even if this is dysfunctional, sometimes dysfunction is normal and comfortable for a family. So by stepping in and offering some alternative ways to cope and manage this cycle, we're exiting at safer moments. So here we have our triggering event, which leads to our early buildup, the negative thoughts. I'm a bad parent for feeling this way. Poor me, I'm the only person going through this. No one else in the whole world is struggling with virtual learning. It's just my dumb self that can't get it together, right? All of these negative ways that just lead to more tension, more opportunity for the high risk situation to present itself. These might be our physical signs, our sweaty palms, our racing heart rate, our headaches, our tension, all of that. If we're able to identify some of these thoughts, we could say, okay, I see myself, I see the barometer rising, I recognize this for what it is, and I'm going to take my deep breaths. I'm going to tap in my partner, and I'm going to get out of here. So this is like a not today, Satan, like this is not going to happen today. I'm able to exit from the situation. I'm able to exit from the feeling, I should say, and not get to this point. But if we do, that's okay. Then we start to recognize this for what it is. It's like, okay, well, I ignored the negative thoughts. I ignored the poor me, but now I'm feeling the tension. I'm feeling the racing heart. I'm feeling the sweaty palms. I'm feeling the headache. Let me recognize that. Let me do myself a favor here and recognize this for what it is and take my deep breaths, step out for a few minutes, pop in the Frozen movie, for my kids and take a second to gather my thoughts. And that's when we exit. That's when we exit the cycle. We have identified what our coping mechanisms are and we're out. Sometimes this doesn't happen, right? For all of our best intentions, sometimes this exit, it just doesn't happen. That's when we get to our harmful incident, the physical abuse, the neglect, the lack of action, the substance use. We're so stressed out, and the only way we know how to manage it is to have a drink. I don't care if it's 8:30 in the morning. This is the only way I know how to calm my nerves to get myself together to help my kids get out to school. Then we lead into the denial, right? Well, it was only one drink. It wasn't so bad. It wasn't my fault. Or we feel guilty for it, right? I'm a bad parent. I couldn't keep it together for my kids. I'm the worst. I'm the worst parent in the world. What kind of parent drinks at 7 o'clock in the morning to get their kids out to school? Not helpful, not productive. Ideally, there is a exit arrow here or here, right? So perhaps once our action plans are in place and operationalized, we're able to avoid these triggering events completely. The kids are going to bed earlier. We're setting our alarms across the room for half an hour earlier. So this triggering event of the stressful morning routine might not even happen. Or because life is unpredictable, we have our triggering event and we say, oh crap, we're running late for school. Let's take a deep breath as a family. We'll be a couple minutes late and we'll move on with our day. There are other opportunities to exit this cycle. Questions, feedback, pushback. Okay, let's wrap up by looking at an action plan. Where are we? Okay, so here we have Monica's recovery plan. If you remember back a couple weeks ago, we spoke about Monica, whose young people were playing outside, they were unsupervised, and they were, running amok, or whatever the case was. You don't need to remember the scenario specifically for the action plan to make sense. So what has Monica named her plan here?
Monica's recovery plan.
Yep, SBC doesn't require you to have a very cute and clever plan name. That's not as significant as will this family actually use this plan. Remember, accountability, specificity, what's the third one I'm missing? Realistic, it must be realistic. Realistic to the family. So when I am unable, it's an individual plan because it's about recovery. When I am unable to study and focus, get my homework done, kids are misbehaving, and I have days that I feel depressed. This is what Monica, the caregiver, the mom, has identified as her difficult situation. What stems from this is the abuse neglect. These are all normal. It's normal that a mother of 3 is unable to study and focus. It's normal that kids behave and fight. It's normal to feel depressed sometimes. What's not normal is what results from this because of the parent's inability to manage it. What are her warning signs? Not quite all the way in the red zone, but the warning signs that she's gonna relapse.
When kids are misbehaving.
Mm-hmm. This is her difficult situation. Her warning sign.
Oh, okay.
Like a failure.
She's depressed. She feels depressed.
She thinks about drinking. She's having a difficult morning with the kids. So we've identified the difficult situation. We've identified what the warning signs are. This is all through our collaboration and interviewing with the family. There's no like magic pill that mom took to get us all this information. Tasks to be accomplished. So let's talk about specificity, accountability, and is this going to be realistic? So I will attend, these are her prevention tasks. This is how she's going to prevent her difficult situation. I will attend AA meetings 2 times a week while my mom watches the kids. How will we hold her to account? She's going to mark it on the calendar when she goes. How do we feel about this group of tasks and how is change noticed? Do we feel that this is measurable?
Yes.
Yes, right? Because she's identified AA 2 times a week. It's specific to the family. She said her mom is going to watch the accountable. She's going to mark it on the calendar. Beautiful, beautiful task to be accomplished. I will wake up earlier than the kids to tidy things around the house while I listen to music that calms me. This is another prevention task to avoid that high risk situation. I'm just going to check off the date on her chore chart. Sounds a bit juvenile, but if it works for her, it works for me. How do we feel about this task? Do we feel like it's specific, measurable? Yeah, I'd say so too. If we're going to get really specific, we might say, how much earlier are you going to wake up? But we don't have to get that nitpicky here. I will ask to be referred to a therapist over the next few weeks. How do we feel about this task?
I mean, it's measurable because you can always check if you know she was referred. It's also specific, but I would like to put example in the action plan a date.
Yeah,
like
I would agree with you there. I might say by X date,
exactly.
I will be referred to a therapist. My case planner will know through osmosis. I'm not sure how the case planner is going to know in this situation. We might want to say, I will text my case planner. We might want to get a little bit more specific. So these are all the things she's going to do to prevent the high risk situation. If we're past the point of prevention, we're going to need to interrupt. So she's identified that feeling discouraged is a problem for her. Maybe she's going to take a few minutes and listen to music. She's going to mark it on the calendar. Great. I will call family members from my recovery group and talk about my feelings. I'm going to keep a phone log. If I can't study, it's all right. No shame. I'll just remind myself to get up a little earlier the next day. Escape. If we're past the point of interruption and we need to escape, she's going to call mom over to see if I need her and put a movie on for the kids, just so she can have a minute to take a breather, and she'll journal about that. Specific to the family, specific to the family's needs. We could make gentle suggestions along the way, but really empower the family to identify their own network and what's going to work for them, with a little bit of coaching from us sprinkled in. If all else fails, we have our absolute backup plan. Anything that doesn't involve abuse and neglect of the children. Monica will focus on staying on her recovery plan, use support so she can better manage her alcoholism and feelings of depression to keep the children supervised and safe. These are your action plans. We're not throwing a million action plans at a family to address every single thing. The action plans are specifically around issues of abuse and neglect, things that will put the children in harm's way. Let me know if you have received tip sheets. SBC offers a bunch of tip sheets. We're rapidly running out of time, but let's just look quickly. Where'd everyone go? At the supervising young children. So there's a whole bunch of different tips for maintaining sobriety, tips for managing feelings of discouragement. And again, these are not all going to work for every client, but there might be some valuable information in here if this is something that a client is struggling with. So always keep your child within sight and hearing distance by planning ahead. Just like we're putting Chandler to bed at 9 o'clock on Friday, we're letting him know from now, like this is the plan, because kids need to know what to expect. Trick or treating. We're going to go to every house. We're going to collect candy. We're going to be home by just creating a plan and letting the kids know what that plan is. Make a quick scan. Be aware of the outside environment. Put barriers around potential dangers. Have door locks. A specific plan for firearms. Choose age-appropriate friends. All different tips about supervising young children. These can inform your action plan. Caregiver will confirm babysitting arrangements 2 days ahead of time so she is able to attend AA meetings if supervision is the issue that you're struggling with. This will be my last call for questions, feedback, confusion. My SBC vets, I also invite you to let me know if you think I'm missing anything about action plans, because we went through it quite quickly, but I think the review was a bit necessary. I will reiterate, there is no shame in confusion. So if you are feeling confused about something and you don't want to say it right now because you think people will judge you, you can email me. That's fine. But if you have typed your name into it, you are good to go.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you,
thank you.
Adelina.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.